Hi, I'm Meg Green, and welcome to Mic Drop, a presentation of Kann Broadcast Talent Coaching. Mic Drop is a conversation with media professionals, peers, and colleagues here to help you navigate the ever-changing media industry. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by a friend and former colleague, Treavor Scales. Hi, Treavor. Welcome to Mic Drop.
Thanks, Meg. I appreciate it as always.
I am really happy you're here. As you know, in our previous conversations, I think your background is really fascinating from a couple of different angles, and I want to ask you some questions about that because the goal of Mic Drop is to share with people in the media industry sort of how we've all navigated it, where did we find success, what are some of the tips and tricks that we've learned, and our goal at Kann Broadcast Talent Coaching is to pay it forward, to share
Mhm,
these lessons learned, if you will,
mhm.
with younger people starting out or people who are looking to pivot in their careers. How can we help them by sharing some of the lessons that we've learned along the way? A lesson or an experience, lesson learned is where I'm going, over the past, let's say 5 years, either at ESPN when you were first on the air or your Bally's experience or coming back, that stands out to you that was really helpful in how you've grown, or maybe something you changed in the way that you do,
Yeah.
your work that has helped you.
I think understanding what I needed from a prep standpoint
Hmm.
were the biggest lessons that I'm still learning. I tweak almost, not overhaul, but tweak my prep process. It feels like nightly
Hmm.
when it comes to being on air at Sports Center and when I was on air down in Atlanta, even though the shows were in essence the same exact thing over and over again,
Right.
my prep would change based on what we had on a rundown or what was necessary from a guest standpoint. And I had to learn to be okay with my prep not necessarily being as routine
Mhm.
as I was when I was an athlete.
Right.
When I was an athlete, I knew I was waking up 4 hours before game time. I knew I was going to have my pregame nap. I knew what I was going to eat for my meal. None of that changed because it was, I'm not superstitious. I'm a little stitious. I like to have things in line that I know will be the case so that I set myself up to succeed.
Right.
But with live television, something is always changing as that. I had to also be just as malleable. And so like that's like the biggest lesson that I'm still learning in that every prep process isn't going to be the same. You're going to have to be able to roll with it. And
Right.
there's beauty in the art that is that ever-changing prep and process.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your trajectory because I think that would be interesting, to for
Sure.
people to understand. We all have a past,
Hmm.
whether it was yesterday or years ago, but I think your particular path to on-air work has some nice turns and twists in it. And I would love to hear sort of what your perspective is on
Yeah.
how that journey has been and what's some of the beauty that you've learned along the way or
I
experienced.
use this turn of phrase or this sort of sentiment so often when folks ask about my background, and it is an amalgamation of people like you, Meg, that have taken a chance on me that did not have to.
Mhm.
From college, being able to walk into a remote operations gig that I didn't know the first thing about, but John Treavor, my first boss at ESPN, was instrumental in helping me understand that as big of a company as ESPN is, there are ways to make inroads in whatever you want to do so long as you're willing to put yourself out there and have a conversation. And so, remote operations, I was behind the scenes of behind the scenes, hiring technical personnel for live events and having very little to do with what actually happens on air from a direct basis. But that still afforded me an opportunity to learn so much about the inner workings of what it means to be a part of a television production and how many people will actually wind up being involved in that college football game that you're watching on TV on Saturdays. And with that opportunity, there was an understanding that for however long this was going to last, they were going to get the very best out of me. Even though ignorantly I came in and said, "Yeah, I eventually want to be on air one day." So like, don't think that this is forever. That was out of pure ignorance, and like I probably should not have done that in my first ever job interview, but it was all I knew, and I felt like I should share that just in case things change. And but again, made it clear that while I'm here, I will give you the very best that I have from an energy standpoint, from a devotion standpoint, and that won't change. And so knowing that we got into 2 years of that crewing gig, and then to go back to what I referenced earlier, the opportunity that was provided by you in the fellowship was placed in front of me. It was unbelievable to have a grassroots training program on what it means to be on air, specifically at ESPN,
Mm.
because it shaped so much. It created so many different relationships for me that I still maintain to this day, from down there at ESPN New York, and even the international team that I wound up signing with on the back
Mhm.
end of that deal. Co-anchors like Phil Murphy and Aaron Natadie, like these are folks that I have developed relationships with, courtesy of that fellowship program, that have always been and will continue to be instrumental to my growth as a broadcaster. So it was 2 years within the fellowship program, cycled through those four different stations between digital, radio, international, and the Sports Center desk itself. After that, it was with the social team and international team primarily. What really felt like my first chance to spread my wings creatively was Sports Center on Snapchat.
Mhm.
That was a ball just because it is the most intimate form of sports media that I've been a part of, and
Mhm.
it still gets referenced to this day because folks as young as, college age kids now will approach me and say, "Hey, I used to watch you on my phone riding into school or on the toilet," which is a little too intimate for me,
Yeah, a
but
little.
it's fine because at least you were watching and you felt a connection. But the Sports Center on Snapchat thing just was the first chance that I really felt creatively helped me really grow into the broadcaster I am. And that, in combination with the background that I had at the desk, from a true broadcast journalist standpoint, helped me get the opportunity in Atlanta. Spent 4 years in Atlanta, 4 wonderful seasons in Atlanta. And then Sports Center came calling again, and here we are in Connecticut,
Yeah,
living
here we are in
quite
Connecticut. So
literally.
share a little bit about your perspective on, you know, on when you're talking to people who are asking you about your career. How'd you do it? How'd you make it happen? You shared with me off air before this taping. Um, you used an analogy that I thought was brilliant, and I would love to have you share that
Sure.
with, someone, if someone's looking at this and they're like, how do I do this?
Yeah,
What's my path? And we were talking about the people mover. Do I just step on and it's going to take me right to my
that's right.
destination?
We
Probably
would
not.
hope, right? That
Right.
would be the best spot. You could pick your moving walkway, step on it, and it is a direct path to exactly where you want to go. Maybe there is a couple times where you have to step on the walking side and go, but
Yeah.
for the most part, it's always going in the direction. But unfortunately, that's not the case. As opposed to the career ladder that is often referred to,
Yes.
it was always put to me that this is more of a career jungle gym. There are obviously there's always a peak at said career jungle gym, but there are so many different ways to get to the top. Sometimes it is a matter of going around the jungle gym, going left, going right. But so long as you are attempting to go vertically up,
Right.
there's also an understanding that occasionally there will be the step down to move laterally, and there's
Mhm.
just so many different paths, I guess is the general sentiment that the jungle gym analogy poses, that helped me understand that there's no one route to get there.
Mhm.
And the ability to understand and appreciate the fact that nobody has the same exact route to get to where they are is part of the beauty of this industry and what makes everybody so individual and sets them apart in a mist of so many different voices.
Yeah. I just think it's a great analogy because some people are fortunate enough to have been able to find sort of that
Right.
moving walkway that literally does go forward to their destination. But in my career, I have found most people are on a very interesting traveling journey that takes them to places they never expected to go. And if they're open to it, you learn, you meet new people, you have more experiences, you gain different skills, and you
Yep.
take those relationships with you to the next destination. And
Absolutely.
ideally, each of these are stepping stones, some laterally, some
Yep.
down, and then a step up, but they're stepping stones to where you really do want to end up, or maybe you'll end up someplace you never expected, and it's the best place you could have ever hoped for, right?
Right. And I think it's just so important to never say no for fear of it taking you further away from where you think you want to go.
Right.
Because so often there are an immense amount of lessons that can be learned in what we often call side quests today, right?
Mhm.
It's not necessarily what you envision as the next step in progression,
Right.
but there's a lot to be taken from, a lot of fulfillment that can be offered in that thing that is off to the side in your mind, but actually is setting you up for where you ultimately want to be down the
Mhm.
line.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, because it's important to me, but I unfortunately did not play college football. Um, college football is an intense game, right? Lots of practice, lots of discipline. From I would imagine everything from your how you eat, how you sleep, how you train. But
100%.
throughout the whole entire process of your college football career, you have coaches. And the
Yes.
coaches, I have, yeah, again, I didn't play, but are sitting down with you, sitting in meetings with you, giving you direction, telling you how to be better. How does coaching in that environment
Mhm.
relate to what you're doing now? What were you able to carry forward,
I
from?
think it's my desire for feedback. Like I want it. I need it because I
Mhm.
understand it's only there to help me feel better and be better. Um and then obviously that same desire for feedback came with a measure of discernment. I knew that I couldn't go to my defensive line coach for feedback for how I'm doing as a running back. It
Mhm.
that's just not his ministry, right?
Right.
So it's just as much about seeking out feedback as being discerning from whom you seek said feedback.
Mhm.
Because it's important to have a trusted set of individuals that you can lean on that can offer you the things that you know you need in order to grow. And that goes both ways. You don't want unnecessary criticism that is actually detrimental to, look, I'll use the word ego, but I want to make sure that it's communicated correctly and that everybody in this industry, everybody in this world has a little bit of ego.
Right.
It's what helps you have confidence in yourself. There's a critical mass of ego that we should try to avoid to hit, but every so often you do need to maintain some semblance of ego awareness, I think is probably a better term. That needs to be checked, that needs to be boosted at times. And so having individuals that you trust that will be there to shape your understanding of how you're being received from an audience standpoint is essential. And it's only there to help you grow in a space. And if you do not seek out that growth,
Mhm.
then that's where the stagnation ends up occurring. When you're not constantly saying to yourself, okay, what can I do to just get 1% better
Right.
every day? Jay Harris, after my first show back, right, like we're talking a couple months ago in mid-May, I had the honor of sitting on the desk with Jay Harris for the 6 p.m. Sports Center for my very first show. And after the show, I was a ball of nerves, obviously, right? Like, I just it was unreal to have that feeling of being at that desk once again. But after the show, Jay and I were talking. I was just like, yeah, no, I felt pretty decent, not because he's a trusted individual in this industry. How do you think it went? He was like, you did good. And one thing I will tell you, and this was his words, and it was such a profound sort of understanding for what this is. He was like, the objective is always to tomorrow you'll be better, the next day you'll be better, and the next day and the next
Mhm.
day. But there's going to be one day where you feel like you don't know what you're doing, and you're going to feel like you don't belong in this industry. But the important thing is to understand that there will always be a next day to once again get better, and the
Right.
following day get better, and the following day to get better. But it was just such a profound understanding of how this stuff is. To go back to the jungle gym analogy, it's never just going to be straight up. It's never going to be a direct path to, professional greatness, for lack of a better term.
Right.
It is understanding that there are going to be side steps, regressions, but as long as the general trajectory is up, you're in a good spot.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious to know, is there anyone in your circle
Hmm.
that isn't, your parents, your brother, your best friend growing up, your wife, somebody, like could you have, we all have the group that's like they love us no matter what, and I
Yeah,
could be terrible and they're gonna take me with them.
that's right.
Who's somebody who's not in that circle,
Okay.
that doesn't owe you a positive response? I mean, you just used Jay Harris, which is a great example, but is there anyone else that's sort of on the periphery of
Hmm.
what we know about you or who we know about, that you are around,
Hmm.
that is that trusted source for you, that you will always get the appropriate type of feedback so that they are really looking out for
Yeah.
me? And I think, if I can just comment, it takes a level of, to your point, trust. Like if I pick up the phone and say, Trevor, that really wasn't a great show last night, that's ideal. I hope that's not me cutting you down. It's me saying,
No,
how can I lift you up? How can I
right.
help you maybe not have that experience again for whatever
Absolutely.
reason, right? But there's things
Yeah.
happening behind the scenes. So I was just curious, who was in your inner
My
circle
corner. Yeah.
outside of your family?
L. Duncan, ironically enough, our timing was really nice because as I was wrapping up the fellowship on the studio side of things, that was right when L. Duncan really sort of walked into ESPN. She and I were learning the ropes of Sports Center updates together.
Mhm.
And since then, she has been like a big sister to me. She has helped me not only from the minutia of on-air things day to day, but career navigation. She's been instrumental in that. I credit her with so much of how I approach things on the daily, how I interact with those that are on the staff with me on
Mhm.
a show basis, show by show basis. She's just been excellent as a mentor, and beyond that, just a shoulder to lean on when things feel like they're incredibly overwhelming and I do not know where to turn. She's been a person that I could easily turn to for that feedback, for that upliftment, and for that ego checking. Because I will I will open a call by saying, "Hey, I need my ego checked real quick." Like I've been blessed with a level of self awareness that gets me in a space where I'm like, okay, I am internalizing a lot of things that have probably nothing to do with me as a person, and I need to decentralize myself from these decisions
Right. Yeah.
and get someone to help me get out of my own head. And she's been the perfect person to help me do that.
Well, one thing I'd like to compliment you on and compliment Elle on in this example is, I have had experiences working with talent where I got the feeling that there's a little bit of a rub, or a
Mm,
competition's not quite the right word, but I have seen a sports center talent not support another person,
yeah.
right? Who's trying to learn the ropes and fit into the organization. These are just two people. This isn't about Sports Center, the show, or
Yeah,
ESPN
yeah.
company. It's just two individuals. And I was really surprised because from my perspective, there's plenty of room in the sandbox for everybody. This
That's
person has
right.
this corner and you have that corner, and why can't you give them a shovel every once in a
That's
while if
right.
they need to scoop? But it's really refreshing, I think, to have you share that you have someone that you work with who,
Yes.
on an outsider's perspective, could be like, why would she ever help him? Like,
That's right.
she wants to grow her career. I'm making this up for Elle, but she wants to
No,
be
but I just gotten there, right? It's
sitting in the
understandable
queen's
that like,
chair, right?
yes,
Like, you don't need to be a part, you don't need to be on my team. Like, you go
that's
do
right.
your thing. I'm taking this over. And yet that's not how she's approaching it. She's like, how can I help this guy? How can I help him navigate? It's a big operation. It's 24/7. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of places, and help you succeed as opposed to just keeping you at arm's length, right?
That's right. Like, and it's just so much about how you approach this space,
Mhm.
to your point, right? There is so much content out there and everybody's fiending for it. Everybody wants to fill their airtime and
Right.
there's no need to scratch, claw. I don't know. Sorry. If you can see, that is a French bulldog that has the time of his life just moving his bed around.
Can't see
See
him.
if I
Where
can
is he?
give you, hey, Jasper. There he
Hi,
is.
puppy.
Hey,
We
bub.
do we do allow dogs on this little conversation. Hi,
Okay.
Jasper.
Sorry. Yeah. So that's just general, the
Is
ambiance of
Jasper in your
this.
inner circle for feedback?
That's right. Jasper is always here. He's the first person that greets me whenever I get back from a show. And so he's the first person that provides a little feedback for me.
Okay.
on a show by show basis. So thankful for him for sure.
Something close enough
But
for the
yeah,
partial.
I completely spaced out. But yeah, the concept of understanding that it's not just a matter of um feeling like you need to be so protective over your space. I think mainly because this stuff can change tomorrow. Like
Right.
you have that understanding in this business life cycle that things almost operate. I think we talked about this before on a 3-year basis. I used to love to think that I could plan out 10 years in the future of what my career looks like.
Right.
Gone are those days. I learned that in this most recent stint.
Right.
2 to 4 years is the range that you can sort of really sort of nail down from
Mhm.
a planning standpoint, but beyond that, you have to be willing to roll with whatever. And when you have that sort of realization that you do not have the stronghold on anything that you think you do,
Mhm.
it helps in being able to look outside of yourself and say, okay, the folks that I am walking this path alongside, that I'm climbing up this jungle gym alongside, I do not have to hold them off in order to get towards where I want to go. I can lend a hand and we could probably slingshot each other
Mhm.
to the various different types of top that we're getting to. And I think just having that understanding, that awareness, has helped me immensely. And I learned it from individuals like Elle that just have that innate desire to help everyone around them. And
Awesome.
it's certainly put me in that exact same mindset.
That's great. All right, I want to be respectful of your time, so I have one more question for you, which is not one that I shared with you. Um, is there a question that you wished you could have asked of someone as
Mm.
you were starting your professional broadcast career?
Question that I wish I could ask. I would want to know before I ever got exposed to all of the inner workings, just how much I'm responsible isn't the word that I want to like. How do you grapple with how little control you have over where your career goes next? I am a person that worked in the definition of what most people assume to be a meritocracy, sports. That
Mhm.
was my whole life. It was if you work hard, if you practice well, if you know the things that you are responsible to know, you will succeed. You will get the playing time. You will get the wins at the end of the day. That is just the entire shaping of sports in general. This space, and really just professionally, is not cut and dry a meritocracy. It has elements of a meritocracy,
Right.
but it is not at the end of the day that. And I still wrestle with this. So this is probably a question I would still ask.
Right.
How do you wrestle with and come to terms with how little you have to do with the proverbial success of your career? Because it's difficult to just relinquish control and almost say, okay, well, I'm just going to do good work and hope that it works out.
Right.
That's a tough thing to just come to understand in a professional sense, and I think it's almost applicable to not just the broadcasting field, but really just career development at large.
I think it's a great question, and it's something that, not it's something that we deal with on the coaching side at Kann Broadcast Talent Coaching because we are working with clients not only on their on-air presence, and how they write and how they project and all of the performance aspects of it, but also career guidance and your career path, how to chart that, how to understand, to your point, what you're walking into and what to expect and what I wouldn't have used control, but I know exactly what you mean. But how do you seize the
Yes.
opportunities that you can participate in, and use them to your advantage, meaning, scheduling meetings with people, getting that feedback. What are some of the steps that you can take that show your interest, show your drive to be really good at what you do, not just showing up every day, but what are those extra steps And how do you apply yourself day in and day out to demonstrate to everybody else around you that this is important to you and you don't take it lightly, right? But you're
Yes.
having fun with it because it's sports. I wish we were curing all diseases, known to the planet, but sports does serve its purpose and emotional well-being for a lot of people.
No
So,
question.
all right, Trev, I'm going to let you go. I want to thank you for making time.
Of
Thank you
course.
for
Anytime.
sneaking Jasper into this little conversation. I think that was
He shoehorned himself in this bad boy, so
very sneaky. And maybe we'll schedule a session with Jasper next,
that's right. He
and
could
then
use the
you
coaching. He may even have some
and then you
feedback
can
for you
sneak
as
in.
well. Who knows?